Before we sew our snaps, we need to prepare our fabric. So you will need only one piece of fabric cut to your pattern with the seam allowance added. We're actually going to ignore the seam allowance line, but it gives us a little extra space to work with here. So you're going to take your fabric, fold it in half lengthways, or like a hot dog, and then press it. This gives us 2 layers of fabric to sew our snaps through, which makes it far more stable. To sew your snaps, first you need your prepared fabric, where it was folded in half. Then you need a double threaded needle. This is really important and different than the stitches we've done thus far. A double threaded needle has a knot in both threads so that you end up creating a loop with your thread. This means that every stitch you take actually has 2 threads in it, and it makes it a stronger stitch. And we want the stitching to be really strong on all of our fasteners because they're gonna take tension on a garment. Then you also need your snaps. So snaps come in pretty much 2 colors predominantly. There is silver and then there is black. And if you look closely, you can see that these snaps they look different. This side is the post side. It is sometimes referred to as the male side. I'm not a fan of that terminology, so I prefer post because that's actually the technical term for it. Post, positive, those are the terms I want you to use. Then there is this half, which is the socket side. It has a hole in it, so it can be called the negative side. So socket, post, negative, positive, any of those terms work. And if you look carefully, the socket side actually kind of looks like it has a bit of a post to it. It does not, it's actually the hole. So you have to be really careful when you are placing your snaps that you line up the socket side, because this is the one that's really easy to flip upside down. So look very carefully at your socket, make sure you can see the hole. If there is no hole in the center that is big enough for the post to go into, it's upside down. Snaps also have a variety of numbers of holes to stitch on. So this one has 4 holes and this one has 6. They're equally as strong, and these are different sizes as well. The bigger snaps are typically a lot stronger and the smaller ones are a little weaker, but they both get the same job done. So I'm going to start with the socket side just to make sure that I don't accidentally flip it upside down. So I'm going to use the bigger snaps. The snaps that I give you in class are probably going to be this size, but I'm going to show you these because this is the type that we use in the costume shop the most. So I'm going to start by placing this in roughly the center of one side. And again, I'm making sure that I can see that the hole is right there in the middle. I'm going to take my thread, and you can go from the back side through if you want on here, or you can come from the front and scoop. I'm going to come from the front, so I'm going to go in and back out while holding the snap where I want it. As you can see, my needle has gone through the fabric and then out through one of the holes in the socket. Pull that through. And then I'm going to do that again. Scoop in and back out into that same hole. When you start sewing a snap, it can be a little challenging because you have to hold it in place. It's very wobbly, but as you go along, it does get a little easier. So for every hole, I want to do at least 3 stitches. So I can see that there's 1 set of stitches on this. I want to do at least 2 more. I'm actually going to go ahead and do 4. 4 is my preference. But anything less than 3, your snap is going to be really weak and is likely to pop off while it is being worn. Because if you've ever watched a stage productions, performers can get really active, which means any activity that they're doing on stage puts strain on the garment. And we need to make sure that everything is secure so that nobody's garment falls off on stage, because that's not fun. Okay, so now I've done 4 stitches in this one hole. So I need to jump to another hole. And the way we do that is I'm going to go back down. See, I'm going through here. It's kind of messy on the back, and that's okay for me. And I'm going to go out the next hole. So I'm jumping over to the next hole. I do not need to tie a knot for each hole. That is a pain. We're just going to jump. And so now I'm going to do 4 stitches on this side. And again, I am holding the snap in place with my fingers, manipulating the fabric at the same time. It can be kind of tricky, but it's worth it. If you notice, I'm always scooping these snaps. That is a far more efficient method of sewing. You can, if you want. I don't recommend it, but if you're really struggling to scoop and get the needle through the hole in the snap, you can go through, pull your thread, come back out. You can sew this way, but on some garments, you don't have that option because you don't want the stitching of the snap to show through. So like on a waistband of, let's say, a skirt, we would actually only scoop far enough to catch the lining part of the waistband so that these stitches are not seen from the right side of the garment. For the purposes of the sample, it's fine. I want you to go through all layers. Okay, so I've done enough stitches in this hole. I'm gonna jump to the next one. Okay, so I am gonna just sew away, and we're gonna cue some music here in just a second. You can skip ahead because it's the same thing, but I am not gonna speed this up so that you can tell how long it takes me to sew on a snap, because it's not particularly quick. All right, cue the music. Okay, so now I am at the end of sewing through all of the holes, and I need to tie a knot. So I'm going to take a stitch right here to make sure that my knot is going to be fully anchored. Then I'm gonna do my knot. One more stitch to anchor it in place and snip. Okay, so I'm gonna need, there's not quite enough thread here to sew the next step. So I'm going to get some more thread real quick. All right, I am threaded up and ready to go. Again, I am doing a double thread. So now I'm ready to sew the socket half of the snap. This one's really easy to place because it's got a flat bottom. But I want you to pay careful attention of how I want you to place this. So whichever side you sewed first, I want you to flip your fabric over and put the other half of your snap on the opposite side on the back side. The reason for this is because I want you to make sure that your snaps are sewn correctly by snapping them together. And when we sew it like this, we end up making a tube that kind of replicates what a skirt is like, or a waistband, because that is how it actually is sewn on a garment, is you're gonna have an overlap that functions like this. So whichever side you sewed first, you want to put the snap on the opposite end on the back side of it. So now I'm gonna sew the socket half using the exact same method. So I'm gonna hold it in place and sew it on. Now for your sample, the goal that I want is just that your snaps are sewn correctly, that they are sturdy and strong. I am gonna snap them. So I need to make sure that your snaps do snap with each other. I will be testing that. And I will be giving your snaps a good tug to see if you have sewn them tightly enough to withstand the tension that normally comes from snaps when they are sewn onto a garment. When we are sewing snaps on a garment though, we also have to line up both halves. And what I like to do for that is I will usually sew the socket side first, and then I can put a little bit of chalk on the tip of the socket, mark the opposite side where I need the snap to match up, and then the center of whatever that chalk mark is where the center of my socket goes. Sorry, I was calling this one socket. This is socket, this is post. I usually sew my post side first. But for this sample for class, we don't have to worry too much about your snaps being exactly lined up because there's not a lot of space to line up here. Roughly in the middle is going to get the job done. Okay, I'm just going to continue sewing like before. We'll probably do some music for a minute. am now at the end of this snap, so I'm going to do another knot. Take a final stitch so that my knot is not going around the edge of the snap. And now as a final step, you always, always, always test your snaps. So I'm going to fold this over, push it in, and you heard the snap, so it works. I will be checking to see if your snaps do this, if they snap or not. If they do not, then you have sewn them incorrectly and you will lose points. But you always want to make sure your snaps are correct and that everything is lined up. As you can see, I am snapping and unsnapping it, and I am also looking to make sure that I have sewn this tightly enough that it can withstand the tension that it takes to pull these apart. And there you have it. That's how you sew snaps.